Welcome to Fictional Narrative. I'm Neri, and it is Cozy Saturday, where every Saturday I review a cozy mystery that I've explored. This week, our cozy mystery is A Glimmer of Death by Valerie Wilson Wesley. So, A Glimmer of Death is the first book in the series. Just want to make that super clear. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book, and then when I give the rating, I'm going to also do a spoiler warning because there is going to be a much more spoilery part of the video. And if it sounds like a book you want to get into, I don't want to spoil too much for you, but you will get your warning. A Glimmer of Death follows our main character, Odessa Jones, trying to keep her life together after the death of her husband and the loss of her business. She's currently working as a realtor at Risco's Realty under a nightmare of a boss, Charlie Risco. And then she is propelled into a completely different nightmare when he's brutally killed. Every single person who works at that realty office is considered a suspect. But Odessa does have a few things to her advantage. Number one, a psychic ability. And number two, her amazing talent for baking. Which, yes, this is one of those cozy mysteries that has a recipe at the end. And I might just try it because it's easy for me to bake something and walk away with a timer than watch something cook. I just do not have the attention span for that, usually. So, a few things that I want to know about this book. I thought it was a really, really great way to show how a character goes through her journey of grief and finding strength and starting to believe in herself. I think it's very realistic in the way that it's done. The mystery itself, I wouldn't say that there's a lot of action in it, but there is a lot of twists and turns. And Odessa's psychic talent is something that's really kind of untrained, so she's navigating that on top of navigating, I have to figure out this mystery. Currently, from what I understand, there are 2 other books in the series, and I do want to read those as well because I want to see how that talent develops and how she continues on, with her journey of grief and recovering and coming into her own strength. That being said, there were a lot of characters that were introduced quite quickly once we get into, her place of work and who all of the suspects are, which is understandable. It was just a little overwhelming, which is part of why I rated it a 4 out of 5. The other part is just because I think the mystery itself could have been a little bit more suspenseful, but I understand from reading this book does work as a standalone, and it is just a nice journey with the character itself. So if you're definitely more of like the mystery based person, this may not be for you, but if you like something that's more character driven, someone you can like relate to, hold on to, then yeah, I think this would be a great book to pick up because I don't think that we see, especially in cozy mysteries, the way that grief is played out and the way that healing is done in a situation where you can't just get away from it, and figure it out later. So that was kind of like a breath of fresh air in this story. Again, or did I not say that I rated it a 4 out of 5? I rated it a 4 out of 5. So now we're going to move into our spoilery section. So if you did not want any spoilers, this is your warning. So moving into our spoilery section. We've already established Odessa isn't moving anywhere. She is staying and healing and, trying to make life work for her in the city where her husband and her bought a house, right? Realistically, a house is a big purchase. So I kind of like this part. She's kind of financially struggling a little bit now that it's like a one income household. She's a realtor now. It's a little bit out of her comfort zone because the business that she and her husband Daryl had created together was a catering business. That cooking, baking, things like that, that's where her passion lies. So she so she's a little out of her depth when we first meet her. And Charlie, her boss, is pulling her into the office like, we need to talk about this progress you have. And we find out kind of a little bit of what kind of an asshole boss he is. Um, yeah, if a boss of mine was going to have a stern talking with me and whipped out his gun to intimidate me, I would not continue working there. Even if it's an empty threat, I don't think I would be like, okay, let me help you profit because it'll pay my bills. Like, I think you kind of have to be in like a totally different state of mind to be like, okay. And that's where Odessa is kind of the outlier between all of the other coworkers that she has. They have history with Risco's Realty that kind of keeps them there. She doesn't really, but she's also not in a position to leave, although being threatened, I guess, or intimidated is probably a good reason to leave. But yeah, so in the story, there's no secret inheritance. She doesn't take off to another town for a fresh start. Nothing like that. She's still living in the home that, feels kind of lonely because she's missing her late husband. And it really comes alive in the little things like his study that she hasn't touched, or the tins that they bought together that they were, gonna bake and fill and give away with cookies, and words of encouragement that she knows he would say to her if he could, or things that he has said to her in the past. So Daryl really does come to life in all of these little things, and you can tell how much they love each other. And like, I mean, if a book were to put in front of me what I would want true love to look like in my real life, I'm like, this is it. And so it pulls you as a reader in, and you get that sense of loss with her, that it's been lonely in their home, even with the cat to keep her company. She has a little cat named Juniper, a really cute cat. Odessa isn't without support, however. She does have kind of an enigmatic aunt named Aunt Phoenix. She's an interesting character. She's very like rough around the edges, tough, tells you things kind of cryptically. She'll text Odessa like lottery numbers or a quote she thought came to her in a certain situation, and it'll apply to the situation. Like, Odessa doesn't understand it yet, but it'll apply to the situation. I think that's cool and all. I feel like I need to explore their relationship a lot more. So with the death of Charlie and everybody, including herself, becoming a suspect, which Odessa isn't a suspect for very long because, like I said earlier, she's kind of an outlier when it comes to everybody who's working at the realty, because she doesn't have the history and the ties and the years that have come along with knowing Charlie as the others do. So she is still in a position where she needs to figure out who the killer is, because the stakes for her is that these coworkers that she has, she may not know them as much as she would like to, but there are some of them that she really does care for. And so she wants to see who put all of them in this position. And through figuring out this mystery, there's a huge shift in Odessa's life where she's using her talent of baking and also her like untrained psychic ability to help her. And what I mean by untrained psychic ability is like she sees glimmers, she sees like colors around people. It may be because of how much she understands them, it may be because of the mood that they're in or whatever they're projecting. She also has like strong feeling of like smells. Like in this particular book, the murders stink of nutmeg. They stink of nutmeg, but it it only comes as a foretelling of death once, and she didn't know what to do with it. She didn't know what it was. So it's little things like that that I feel like she's just kind of out of touch with her talent. She finds it unreliable, therefore, she doesn't put any reliance into it. Therefore, she's out of tune with it. So, I would like to see her become more in tune with it and be able to use it because obviously, if it's a cozy mystery, if it's a mystery at all, I mean, I don't know what's going to be the next mystery, but obviously it's going to come up again, right? So, of course, we have to see how it evolves. But anyway, because she's leaning into her strength, she's also coming back into their catering business in terms of baking. So, using her talent of baking, she's, you know, the phrase that's like, well, people say this about men, but it can literally be about anybody. Like the way to someone's heart is through their stomach. She's kind of using that as ammo, but also to boost herself now as a small business. So there is another character who is a very pivotal character in terms of helping her find certain directions in this case. His name is Lennox. He is a restaurant owner and he places a few orders of cakes with her. So she is starting to get a little boost in her business so she can start doing once again the things that she's actually passionate about. And he also used to be a former police officer. So he actually gives her some clues and helps her understand things here and there. And I mean, she is a very, very sweet character to the point where she's like, Lennox, can you tell me how a con works? I'm like, oh. And of course, I know it's like they're just the author is explaining it through the characters, but I just think that she is so sweet. She tries to look for the best in people. It's just a really endearing thing for the character. So that brings us to, is there a love interest? Because it's a cozy mystery, there might be a love interest. Listen, I just read this book, so Daryl just came alive to me like posthumously. So I'm not over Daryl, and Odessa's not over Daryl, so this is where we're at. Everything else remains to be seen because if he doesn't treat me like Daryl, I don't want him. So then, next question. Did Charlie Risco deserve it? Yeah, of course he did. Because on top of being an intimidating, threatening jerk, he's also an exploitative jerk. Like, he exploits young, desperate people, and then for years they're tied to him. Do I think that the cost was so much higher than it should have been? Yes. Yes, I do. I do. Like, I sympathize. I sympathize, but it at what cost? At what consequences? And but it's also because of that, because of the stakes of how the story ends. I have to know what happens to all of the other characters next. And let me tell you, all of these characters are super suspicious because at any point that Odessa is learning more and more and more and more and more about how all of her coworkers got involved with Risco Realty, the more my head was spinning with her because I was like, this person has a reason, and this person has a reason, and this person has a reason, and this person has a lot of reasons, and they're really good reasons. And they all suspect each other. It's it's really, really crazy. Also, another thing, like shout out to Valerie Wilson Wesley, but not but because characters that are either mentioned that aren't neurotypical or are in the story that aren't neurotypical, they are never ever treated as the butt of the joke. They're treated with kindness, with respect, with love. So yeah, I enjoyed my time with this book. There are only two more currently, and that is encouraging because I don't have a gigantic backlog to go through as these series do. So if you've watched this far, thank you so much for joining me for another cozy Saturday. Let me know if you would pick up this book and whether and if you haven't watched any of the other cozy Saturdays, I would give them a watch. And I'll see you next time. Bye.